Admiral Kang Do-yan stood on the bridge of the Earthship Unity, watching the massive space station grow larger through the viewscreen. Nexus Prime was unlike anything humanity had ever built. The station stretched for hundreds of kilometers. In all directions, its crystalline towers spinning slowly in the darkness of space. Lights from a dozen different alien species created patterns that hurt human eyes to look at directly. "First time seeing it never gets old," said Commander Yoon Hae-jin from beside him. She was Earth's top military strategist, chosen specifically for this historic mission. Her dark eyes reflected the strange lights of the alien station. "Hard to believe we're actually here," Do-yeon nodded slowly. 3 months ago, humanity had achieved faster-than-light travel for the first time. Within weeks, alien ships had appeared in Earth's solar system. Not to invade, but to welcome? The Galactic Council had been watching humanity's progress for decades, waiting for them to develop the technology needed to join the greater community of intelligent species. The communications officer turned from his station. "Admiral, we're receiving docking instructions from Nexus Prime Traffic Control. Bay 77, Section Delta. Acknowledged." "Take us in, Lieutenant." Dr. Park Min-ho appeared at Do-yeon's shoulder, carrying his datapad as always. The xenobiologist had spent every waking moment since leaving Earth studying the information the Council had provided about its member species. "Admiral, I've been reviewing the Council's historical records again. There are some gaps that concern me." "What kind of gaps?" Yoon Hae-jin asked, though her attention remained focused on the approaching station. "Several species are listed as former members, but there's no explanation for why they left the Council. The Harani, the Voss, the Kandari, all of them had memberships that lasted exactly 12 to 15 years before they simply disappear from all records." Do-yeon frowned. "Perhaps they chose to leave?" "That's what the records suggest, but it's strange. Why would species leave such a beneficial arrangement? And why are there no current diplomatic relationships with any of them?" The ship shuddered slightly as it entered the station's docking bay. Through the viewscreen, they could see alien dock workers moving to secure their ship. Some walked on 4 legs, others floated through the air like living smoke, and a few looked almost human except for their blue-tinted skin. "We'll have plenty of time for questions once we meet with the Council," Do-yeon said. "For now, let's focus on making a good first impression." The docking process took an hour. When the airlock finally cycled open, they were greeted by a delegation of 3 alien beings. The first was tall and thin, its body seeming to shift between solid matter and glowing energy. This was a Voidborn, one of the founding species of the Council. The second was shorter but heavily muscled, with thick gray skin and 4 arms. A Krex warrior, judging by the ceremonial armor. The third looked almost human, but its eyes were solid black and it had no hair anywhere on its body. "Welcome to Nexus Prime," the Voidborn said, its voice like music played through a crystal. "I am Chancellor Tisara. This is Warlord Zephan of the Krex and Ambassador Nexhai of the Zirin Union. We have waited long for this moment." Admiral Do-yeon stepped forward and offered the traditional human greeting, extending his hand. The alien seemed familiar with the gesture, though only the humanoid Zirin actually shook it. "I'm Admiral Kang Do-yeon, representing the United Earth Government. This is Commander Yoon Hae-jin and Dr. Park Min-ho." "Your species shows great promise," Warlord Zephan said, his voice deep and rough. "We have watched your wars, your conflicts. You know how to fight. This is good. The galaxy needs warriors." Chancellor Tisara made a sound that might have been disapproval. "The galaxy needs peace, old friend. But yes, humanity's military capabilities are impressive. Come, there is much to discuss." They were led through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. The station was clearly ancient, its walls covered in symbols from dozens of different cultures. Other aliens moved past them, some stopping to stare at the humans with obvious curiosity. Most seemed friendly enough, though a few gave them looks that made Do-yeon uncomfortable. The council chamber was enormous, with seats arranged in a complex pattern that somehow allowed everyone to see everyone else. 12 different species were represented, each sitting in sections designed for their specific biology. The humans were given places of honor near the center. Before we begin formal proceedings, Chancellor Tessara announced, let us share what we offer each other. Humanity seeks membership in our council. We offer protection, advanced technology, and access to trade networks spanning half the galaxy. And, in return? Commander Yun Haijin asked. In return, we ask that humanity contribute to the common defense. Your military forces would join our peacekeeping fleet, helping to maintain order throughout council space. Dr. Park Minho leaned forward slightly. How many ships would Earth need to contribute? A significant portion, Warlord Zephan replied. Perhaps 70% of your current fleet. This may seem like much, but remember that you will have the protection of the entire council. Your home system will be safer than it has ever been. Admiral Doyun felt a chill run down his spine. 70% of Earth's fleet would leave their home system almost defenseless. That seems like a large commitment for a new member. All new members must prove their dedication. Ambassador Nexhai spoke for the first time, his voice flat and emotionless. It is tradition. Once you are established as a full member, your contribution requirements will be reduced. The negotiations continued for hours. The Council offered impressive technologies, gravity control, energy shields, weapons that could crack asteroids with a single shot. They spoke of trade opportunities that would make Earth wealthy beyond imagination. They promised that humanity would never again need to fear attack from any hostile force, but they were firm about the military contribution. 70%, no less. I need to consult with my government, Admiral Doyun finally said. Of course, Chancellor Tessara replied, but do not take too long. The galaxy is a dangerous place and threats can emerge quickly. Better to be protected sooner rather than later. That evening, in their assigned quarters aboard the station, the human delegation met privately. I don't like it, Dr. Park Minho said immediately. 70% of our fleet? That's not asking for contribution, that's asking for control. The benefits are significant, Commander Yun Haijin pointed out, though she sounded uncertain. And they're right about the galaxy being dangerous. We've only just achieved FTL travel. There could be hostile species out there that would see us as easy targets. Admiral Doyun stared out the window of their quarters at the vast expanse of space beyond the station. Somewhere out there was Earth, small and vulnerable and newly alone in a galaxy full of unknowns. The question is whether we trust them, he said finally. My research suggests we should be cautious, Dr. Park Minho replied. But I'll admit, I don't have enough information to make a proper assessment. The gaps in their historical records still bother me. Then we ask for more time, more information. If they're legitimate, they'll understand our caution. But when Admiral Doyun made this request the next morning, the reaction was not what he expected. Chancellor Tessara's energy form flickered with what might have been irritation. Warlord. Zephan's 4 hands clenched into fists. Even Ambassador Nexhai showed emotion, his black eyes narrowing. Time is a luxury the galaxy rarely provides, Chancellor Tessara said. Threats can emerge from dark space without warning. The longer humanity remains unprotected, the greater the risk to your people. What threats? Commander Yun Haijin asked. You've spoken of dangers but given no specifics. The Devourers, Warlord Zephan said, and the entire chamber fell silent. They come from beyond our galaxy, consuming entire worlds for biomass. They have not been seen for 3 centuries, but when they return, they will be hungrier than ever. Doctor. Park Minho perked up with interest. These Devourers, are there records of their previous attacks? Limited records, Ambassador Nexhai replied. Most worlds they attack leave no survivors. Then how do you know so much about them? Another silence fell over the chamber. Finally, Chancellor Tessara spoke. We have our methods. What matters is that humanity needs protection and we offer it. But protection requires sacrifice. Admiral Doyun looked around the chamber at the faces of the 12 species that made up the council. Some looked genuinely concerned for humanity's welfare. Others looked impatient as if this was taking too long. A few looked hungry, not for food but for something else. We need to return to Earth to discuss this with our government, he said finally. You have 1 month, Chancellor Tessara announced. After that, the offer expires. The galaxy moves quickly, Admiral. Those who cannot keep pace are often left behind. As the human delegation prepared to leave Nexus Prime, Dr. Park Minho managed to access more of the Council's historical databases. What he found made his blood run cold, but by then they were already traveling back to Earth, carrying an offer that would change humanity's fate forever. The question was whether that change would be salvation or doom. Captain Lee Soman was drinking her morning coffee when the alarms started screaming throughout the space station. She dropped her cup and ran to the command center, her boots echoing in the metal corridors of Titan Defense Station. The coffee splashed across the floor behind her. Forgotten. Report, she shouted as she burst through the doors. Ma'am, we're detecting massive signatures at the edge of the solar system. Lieutenant Kim Jun-ho called from his sensor station. His face was pale. They just appeared out of nowhere. No warning, no communication. They're big, Captain, really big. Soman rushed to look at his screen. What she saw made her stomach drop. Dozens of objects were moving toward the inner solar system, each one the size of a small moon. They didn't look like any ships she had ever seen. They were dark, twisted things that seemed to pulse with their own internal light. How many ships do we have in the area? She asked. 12 patrol vessels, Captain. The rest of our fleet is, with Admiral Kang at the council stations. 12 ships against dozens of unknown vessels. Soman felt sweat on her forehead. Send an immediate message to Earth Command. Then try to contact these ships. Standard first contact protocols. But the unknown ships didn't respond to any communication attempts. They just kept coming, moving faster than anything that size should be able to move. As they got closer, the sensors picked up more details that made everyone in the command center whisper in fear. The ships were alive, they pulsed like giant hearts. Their surfaces rippled like skin, and they were heading straight for Mars. Captain, Mars Colony is reporting. Visual contact, Lieutenant Kim said. They're requesting immediate assistance. Tell them we're coming, Soman replied, though she knew 12 ships wouldn't be enough. And keep trying to reach Admiral Kong. The first attack came without warning. The lead alien ship opened up like a flower, revealing a mouth filled with teeth the size of skyscrapers. Energy beams shot out, striking Mars Colony's main dome. The dome held for exactly 3 seconds before it cracked like an egg. My God, someone whispered behind Soman. The alien ship moved closer to Mars and began to feed. Massive tentacles reached out and started pulling chunks of the planet's surface into its mouth. The red dust of Mars swirled around the creature, as it consumed rock, metal, and everything else it could reach. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from Admiral Kong. Soman grabbed the communication device. Admiral, thank God, we need immediate assistance. Unknown hostiles are attacking Mars Colony. Admiral Kang Do-yeon's voice came through the speakers, but he sounded strange, tired, defeated. Captain, I've received your reports. The Council has been informed of the situation. What are your orders, sir? There was a long pause. Too long. Captain, I've been ordered to maintain position with the Council fleet. We are to await further instructions. Soman couldn't believe what she was hearing. Sir, Mars is being destroyed. These things are eating the planet. I understand, Captain. But my orders are clear. The Council is handling the situation through diplomatic channels. Another pause, then Admiral Kong's voice came back, quieter now. Soman, listen to me carefully. Take whatever ships you can and start evacuation procedures. Get as many people off the inner planets as possible. So what's really happening? Out there? I can't say more over open channels. Just trust me. Start the evacuations now. The transmission ended, leaving Captain Soman staring at the communication device. Around her, the command center buzzed with activity as her crew tracked. The destruction of Mars, the alien creatures, whatever they were, had surrounded the planet. They were eating it piece by piece. Lieutenant Kim, contact Earth immediately. Tell them to begin emergency evacuation procedures for all outer colonies. Captain, what about Jupiter Station? They're reporting the same unknown ships approaching. Their position, Soman closed her eyes for a moment. Jupiter Station housed nearly 1 million people, mostly miners and their families. Tell them to run, just run. But running wasn't enough. The alien ships were faster than anything humanity had built. Jupiter Station sent out a desperate call for help as the creatures surrounded them. Then the transmission stopped. 3 days. Later, Dr. Park Min-ho sat in a small room aboard Admiral Kong's flagship, staring at data that made him sick to his stomach. The Admiral had called him in secret, away from the Council observers who watched everything the human fleet did. Tell me what you found, Admiral Kong said quietly. The creatures attacking our system are called Devourers, Dr. Park replied. I've been accessing the Council's restricted databases. Admiral, they've known about this attack for months. Admiral Kong's face went hard. Explain. The Devourers follow a pattern. They attack specific star systems, always those belonging to newer Council members. The attacks always happen 6 to 8 months after a species contributes most of their military to the Council fleet. You're saying this is planned? I'm saying this is how the Council works, Admiral. They find species with military potential, convince them to join, take their fleets, then feed their home systems to the Devourers. Admiral Kong stood up and walked to the small window. Outside he could see other Council ships, massive vessels from a dozen different species. All of them just sitting there while Earth burned. The species I couldn't find records for, Doctor. Park continued. The Harani, the Voss, the Kandari. They weren't former members who left. They were former members who were fed to the Devourers. How long have the Council been doing this? Centuries, Admiral, maybe longer. They use the Devourers as a weapon. Keep them fed with smaller species to prevent them from attacking the Council's core worlds. Admiral Kong turned back to face Dr. Park. Do they know you've discovered this? I don't think so. But Admiral, we need to warn Earth. We need to get our people out of there. With what ships? Admiral Kong's voice was bitter. 70% of our fleet is here, under Council command. Every time I request permission to return to Earth, they remind me of my obligations under the treaty. As if summoned by their conversation, the communication system activated. Chancellor Tisara's musical voice filled the room. Admiral Kong, please report to the Council briefing room immediately. Admiral Kong looked at Dr. Park. Not a word about what you've discovered. If they know we know, they might decide to eliminate us here and now. The briefing room was full of Council officers from various species. Admiral Kong noticed that none of them looked concerned about the reports coming from Earth's solar system. If anything, they looked bored. Admiral, Chancellor Tisara began, we understand your concern for your home system. The Devourer attack is unfortunate, but not unexpected. Not unexpected? Admiral Kong couldn't keep the anger out of his voice. The Devourers attack systems on the galactic rim frequently, Warlord Zephan explained. It is one of the reasons. We maintain the peacekeeping fleet, however, engaging them directly would cost many lives. So you're just going to let them destroy Earth? We are pursuing diplomatic solutions, Ambassador Nexhai said in his flat voice. The Devourers can sometimes be reasoned with. Admiral Kong wanted to laugh, but it would have been the laugh of a madman. Diplomatic solutions? They're eating planets. Which is exactly why we cannot risk our fleet in a direct confrontation, Chancellor Tisara replied. If we lose ships fighting the Devourers, who will protect the rest of Council space? On Titan Station, Captain Lee Soman watched the last evacuation ship leave for the outer system. Earth itself was still fighting, but Mars was gone and Jupiter Station was nothing but debris. The Devourers had grown larger after feeding, their bioships now the size of small moons. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from Earth Command. Lieutenant Kim reported. Commander Yoon Hae-jin's face appeared on the main screen. She was in an underground bunker somewhere, emergency lights flashing behind her. Soman, how many ships do you have left? 8, Commander. We lost 4 trying to slow them down at Jupiter. The Devourers have reached Earth orbit. We're beginning final evacuation procedures, but we can't get everyone out in time. Captain Soman felt something break inside her chest. Commander, where is our fleet? Where is the Council? Commander Yoon's face was grim. The Council is pursuing diplomatic solutions. Our fleet has been ordered to maintain position and await instructions. What instructions? Let our planet die? That appears to be the plan, Captain. Through the view screen, Captain Soman could see Earth in the distance, a blue and white marble that had been humanity's home for thousands of years. Around it, dark shapes moved like sharks, getting ready to feed. Commander, what are your orders? Save who you can, Captain. And remember what they did to us. The transmission ended just as the first Devourer ship reached Earth's atmosphere. Captain Soman watched through her tears as the creature opened its massive mouth and began to feed on the world that had given birth to the human race. In the depths of space, Admiral Kang Do-yeon received the final transmission from Earth. Commander. Yoon Hae-jin's voice was calm, professional, even as her world died around her. Admiral, this is our final message. Earth is lost. The Devourers are feeding. We estimate 12 billion casualties. Admiral Kang closed his eyes. Admiral, the Council has betrayed us. They planned this. They've been feeding species to these creatures for centuries, and now it's our turn. When Admiral Kang opened his eyes, Commander Yoon Hae-jin stood in the ruins of what used to be Seoul, watching the sky burn. Above her, the Devourer ships blocked out the sun, their massive forms casting shadows across the dying world. The air tasted of smoke and metal, and every few seconds the ground shook as another chunk of the planet was torn away. Commander, the last transport is ready for launch, Sergeant Choi Min-soo reported through her radio. His voice was steady, but she could hear the fear underneath. How many? She asked, not taking her eyes off the alien ships. 200,000, ma'am. That's all we could fit. 200,000 people. Out of the 12 billion who had called Earth home just 3 weeks ago. Hae-jin closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them with new resolve. Get them out of here, Sergeant. Make sure they reach the rendezvous point. What about you, Commander? Someone needs to buy them. Time. Hae-jin looked at her remaining forces. 50 soldiers, 3 tanks, and 2 fighter jets that somehow still worked despite the electromagnetic chaos the Devourers created just by existing. It wasn't much, but it would have to be enough. Listen up, she called to her troops. We're not going to win this fight. We're not even going to survive it. But we're going to make sure those people get away. We're going to show these monsters that humans don't go quietly. The soldiers nodded. They all knew this was the end, but they also knew what they had to do. High above, Captain Lee Soman pushed her damaged ship as hard as it would go. The Defiant had lost half its armor and most of its weapons, but its engines still worked. Behind her flew the last 7 ships of Earth's home defense fleet. Captain, the final transport has cleared the atmosphere, her navigator reported. Good. Signal all evacuation ships to jump to hyperspace immediately. Don't wait for us. Captain, what about the Council fleet? Are they coming to help? Soman laughed, but there was no humor in it. The Council fleet is busy with diplomatic solutions, Lieutenant. We're on our own. She watched through her view screen as the evacuation ships disappeared into hyperspace, carrying the last survivors of humanity to safety. Now only her small fleet remained, facing creatures that could eat planets. All ships, this is Captain Salmon. We're going to give Earth a proper farewell. Target the lead Devourer and fire everything we have. The human ships opened fire with their remaining weapons. Energy beams and missiles struck the massive alien creature, but the damage was like throwing rocks at a mountain. Still, they kept firing. One of the Devourer ships turned toward them, its mouth opening to reveal rows of teeth larger than buildings. Soman saw her death approaching and felt only sadness for the world they couldn't save. It's been an honor serving with you all, she said over the radio. Then the creature's energy beam struck her ship, and Captain Lee Soman became one with the stars. Far away from Earth, Admiral Kang Do-yeon was planning treason. He sat in his private quarters aboard the flagship Determination, surrounded by his most trusted officers. On his desk lay reports from across the human fleet, all saying the same thing. The Council was keeping them away from Earth while their homeworld died. How many ships can we count on? He asked. Captain Ru Tae-hoon, commander of the battleship Vengeance, checked his datapad. 43 ships confirmed, Admiral. Maybe 6 more if we're lucky. That's out of the original 87 in the Council fleet. What about the others? Some captains are too afraid to break their oaths to the Council. Others think we should wait for official orders. A few actually believe the Council is trying. To help, Dr. Park Min-ho looked up from his own datapad. Admiral, I've been monitoring Council communications. They're already discussing the unfortunate loss of Earth and how humanity's remaining forces will be reassigned to other duties. Reassigned to what? Guard duty at the edges of Council space, far from any important worlds. They want to scatter. U.S. so we can never pose a threat. Admiral Kong stood up and walked to his window. In the distance, he could see Council ships from a dozen different species. None of them were moving toward Earth. None of them seemed concerned that an entire world was dying. Send a coded message to all human ship commanders, he said quietly. Tell them to prepare for immediate departure. We're going home. Sir, the Council will consider that mutiny. The Council can consider it whatever they want, Captain. They betrayed us first. 3 hours later, the human ships began to move. Not all of them, but enough. 49 vessels broke formation and headed for the hyperspace jump point. Council ships moved to intercept them, but Admiral Kang had planned for this. This is Admiral Kang Do-yeon to all Council vessels, he broadcast on open channels. We are returning to defend our homeworld, as is our right under galactic law. Any attempt to stop us will be considered an act of war. Chancellor Tisara's voice came back immediately. Admiral, you are in violation of your treaty obligations. Return to formation immediately. Our treaty obligations ended when you abandoned Earth to the Devourers, Admiral Kong replied. Humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. Admiral, you don't understand the consequences of your actions. I understand them perfectly, Chancellor. We trusted you, and you fed our world to monsters. Now we know what kind of galaxy this really is. The Council ships tried to block the human fleet, but Admiral Kang had chosen his moment carefully. Most of the Council's heavy warships were on patrol in other sectors. The ships here were fast but lightly armed, meant for patrol duty rather than fleet combat. All human ships prepare for combat, Admiral Kang ordered, the first battle between humanity. And the Galactic Council lasted exactly 17 minutes. When it was over, 3 Council ships were destroyed, and the human fleet was jumping to hyperspace, heading home to a world that might already be dead. By the time they reached Earth's solar system, it was too late. The blue and green world that had been humanity's cradle was now a brown and black ruin. The Devourers had eaten the oceans, the forests, the mountains, everything that had made Earth beautiful. What remained was a dead rock spinning in space. My God, someone whispered on the bridge. Admiral Kang stared at the corpse of his homeworld and felt something die inside his chest. Then he felt something else replace it. Something cold and hard and absolutely merciless. Admiral, we're detecting human life signs, the sensor officer reported. Multiple ships in the asteroid belt. Take us there, maximum speed. They found the survivors in a hidden base built inside a large asteroid. Commander Yoon Hae-jin was there, along with 50,000 other humans who had managed to escape Earth's destruction. They had been hiding for 2 weeks, afraid to use their radios in case the Devourers were still in the system. When Admiral Kang's shuttle landed in the asteroid base, Commander Hae-jin was waiting for him. She looked older than when he had last seen her, her face marked by grief and anger. Admiral, she said simply. Commander, how many? 50 million survivors total, scattered across a dozen systems. Most of them are in ships with nowhere to go. Earth is gone, Admiral. 12 billion people, dead. Admiral Kang nodded slowly. And the Council? Still sending messages asking us to return to our duties, They want us to pretend nothing happened. They want us to serve them after they murdered our world. Around them, other survivors gathered to listen. These were the lucky ones, the few who had escaped. But they were also something else now. They were the last of their kind, homeless in a galaxy that had shown them its true face. "What are your orders, Admiral?" Commander Haijin asked. Admiral Kong looked at the faces around him. He saw fear there, and grief, but also something else. He saw anger, the kind of anger that could burn down galaxies. "We're leaving," he said, "all of us. We're going somewhere the Council can't find us." "Where?" "The void, the empty space between. Galaxies. We're going to disappear, Commander. And while we're gone, we're going to prepare." "Prepare for what?" Admiral Kong turned back toward the entrance of the base, where his ship waited to carry them into exile. "War, Commander. The Council thinks they've eliminated humanity as a threat. They think we'll just fade away quietly." "They're wrong." Dr. Park Minho stepped forward. "Admiral, I've been analyzing the Devourer attack patterns. There's something you need to know. The creatures aren't just mindless beasts. They're controlled. The Council has been directing them for centuries. Proof? The attack patterns are too precise. The timing too perfect. And I found something else in the Council databases before we left. Records of previous negotiations with the Devourers. The Council feeds them specific worlds in exchange for leaving Council core systems alone." Admiral Kong felt the cold thing in his chest grow larger. "So they didn't just abandon us. They actively arranged our destruction." "Yes, sir." Commander Haijin stepped beside the Admiral. "Then we make them pay." "Yes," Admiral Kong agreed, "but not yet. First, we disappear. We let them think they've won. We let them forget about us while we grow strong." Over the next week, 50 million humans gathered in the empty space between star systems. They came in damaged ships, overcrowded transports, and military vessels scarred by battle. They were all that remained of a species that had reached for the stars and found only betrayal. Admiral Kong addressed them all from his flagship, his words broadcast to every ship in the refugee fleet. "The galaxy has shown us what it thinks of humanity," he said. "We are Nathi." 5 years had passed since the last human had seen a natural star. In the dark space between galaxies, far from any sun, the survivors had built something that would have terrified their ancestors. They called it Haven, but it looked nothing like Home. Admiral Kang Do-yan, now calling himself Supreme Commander, stood on the observation deck of the massive construction platform. Before him stretched a shipyard that went on for thousands of kilometers. Hundreds of ships were being built at the same time, but these were not the clean, peaceful vessels that Earth had once produced. These ships were weapons. Pure and simple. The first Vengeance-class dreadnought will be ready for testing next month, reported engineer KOG-1. She was young, born in the year after Earth's destruction, and had never seen a world with grass or blue skies. To her, the cold metal of the shipyard was home. "How many crew will it need?" asked Commander Yoon Haijin. She had changed too over the years. The grief had hardened into something sharp and cutting. 3,000 humans plus automated systems, Ko Jawan replied. "But sir, these ships are designed to crack planets. Are we really planning to?" "Yes," Supreme Commander Kong said simply. "We are planning to do exactly what they did to us." The young engineer nodded. She had been raised on stories of Earth's green fields and blue oceans. She had also been raised on stories of how the Council had fed their world to monsters. Like everyone born in the void, she knew only one purpose in life. Dr. Park Minho approached from across the platform. He moved differently now, with the careful walk of someone who had spent too many years breathing recycled air and living under artificial gravity. In his hands he carried a data tablet that glowed with alien symbols. "Commander, the biological weapons are ready for field testing." "Show me." Dr. Park activated his tablet and holographic images filled the air between them. They showed alien body structures, each one marked with glowing red points. "Each Council species has specific biological weaknesses," he explained. "The Voidborn can be disrupted with certain electromagnetic frequencies. The Krek's nervous system can be attacked with modified Earth viruses. The Xeran are vulnerable to engineered bacteria that eat their synthetic skin. Commander Hyjin studied the images with professional interest. How long do these weapons take to work? Hours for some species, days for others. But Commander, I've also made progress on the Devourer project. Supreme Commander Kong turned sharply. Explain. The Devourers aren't just controlled by the Council. They're actually created by them. Engineered creatures designed to consume specific types of worlds. But I found a way to reverse the control signals. You can turn them against the Council? Better than that, sir. I can make them obey us. The silence that followed was filled with the sounds of construction. Hammers striking metal, welders working, the hum of machinery that never stopped. Haven never slept. There was too much work to do. How many Devourers are in Council space? Commander Hyjin asked. Hundreds, scattered across the galaxy. Most are dormant, waiting for their next feeding assignment. But if we can take control of them? Supreme Commander Kong nodded slowly. The Council used our own fears against us. Now we'll use their own weapons against them. Ko Jiwan looked uncomfortable. Commander, are we talking about destroying entire worlds? Billions of innocent people? The three older humans looked at her with expressions she couldn't read. Finally, Supreme Commander Kong spoke. Engineer Ko, do you know how many innocent humans died when Earth was destroyed? 12 billion. Sir? And how many Council species spoke against the feeding of Earth to the Devourers? None, sir. How many Council worlds offered to take human refugees after our homeworld was consumed? Ko Jiwan's voice was quiet. None, sir. Then tell me, Engineer, where are these innocent people you're worried about? The young woman had no answer. She had been born into a universe where humanity stood alone, where every other species had either participated in their destruction or remained silent while it happened. Across the shipyard, another group was working on a different kind of project. Captain Rute Hoon supervised the training of children who would never know peace. They started military education at age 6. By age 12, they could strip and reassemble any weapon in the human arsenal. By age 16, they were deadlier than any soldier Earth had ever produced. Today we practice zero-gravity combat, Captain Ru announced to a group of teenagers. They moved with the fluid grace of people who had grown up in space, but their eyes held something that would have frightened their grandparents. These children knew only one emotion when they thought about aliens: hate. Remember, Captain Ru continued, aliens are not like us. They do not think like us. They do not feel guilt or mercy the way humans do. The Council proved this when they murdered our world. So when you face them in battle, show them the same mercy they showed Earth. The teenagers nodded. Among them was Park Sun-ho, Dr. Park Min-ho's nephew. He had been 8 years old when Earth died. Now he was 13 and he could kill with his bare hands in 17 different ways. Uncle Min-ho says the biological weapons are ready, he told his training partner, a girl named Li Yuna whose parents had died defending the last transport. Ships from Earth. Good, Yuna replied. I want to see what Council blood looks like. These were the children of the void, born in darkness, raised on stories of betrayal, trained from birth to be weapons themselves. They had never seen a sunset or felt rain, but they could navigate through hyperspace and calculate orbital bombardment patterns in their heads. In another section of Haven, teams of humans worked on captured Council technology. Over the years, raids on isolated Council outposts had provided them with examples of alien science. But humanity didn't just copy what they found. They improved it. The shield generators are working at 200% of Council specifications, reported Technician Choi Borum. And the weapon systems are firing at 3 times their original power output. How? Asked Commander Hyjin. We removed the safety limits, ma'am. Council technology is built to avoid accidents. Our technology is built to cause them. This was how humanity had survived in the void. They took everything they could find and made it more dangerous. Council computers became hacking systems that could infiltrate any network. Council medicine became biological weapons. Council transportation became invasion fleets. Supreme Commander Kong walked through the residential sections of Haven, observing his people. They lived in small, efficient spaces, nothing wasted. Every person had a job that contributed to the great project. Some built ships, some grew food in hydroponic gardens, some raised children who would one day return to the galaxy as conquerors, but they all shared the same dream. The dream of watching Council worlds burn. "Commander," called Dr. Park Min-ho from behind him. "I need to show you something." They walked to Dr. Park's laboratory, a complex of rooms filled with alien specimens and human engineering. In the center of the main lab was a tank filled with dark liquid. Something moved inside it. "What am I looking at?" Supreme Commander Kong asked. "A baby devourer, grown from genetic samples we recovered from Earth's remains, but this one has been modified. It responds only to human control signals." The creature in the tank was small, no bigger than a dog, but it had the same terrifying features as its planet-eating relatives: rows of teeth, tentacles that moved with hungry intelligence, and eyes that seemed to look into the soul. "It's programmed to recognize Council species as food," Dr. Park continued, "but it will not harm humans. In fact, it will protect us. How many can you make? With the current facilities?" "Hundreds, but Commander, I have a bigger proposal." Dr. Park activated another display showing the star maps of Council space. Red dots marked the locations of dormant devourers throughout the galaxy. "Instead of growing our own, we take control of the ones that already exist. My control signal can be broadcast from our ships. Every devourer in Council space could become our weapon." Supreme Commander Kong stared at the map. Hundreds of dormant creatures, each one capable of consuming worlds, all waiting for someone to give them orders. "The Council thinks they control the devourers," he said slowly, "but now we'll control them instead." "Yes, sir. And unlike the Council, we won't use them to maintain peace. We'll use them to bring war." That night, Supreme Commander Kong addressed the entire population of Haven. 50 million humans gathered in the Great Assembly Hall, their faces lit by the cold light of artificial stars. "My fellow humans," he began, "we have spent 5 years preparing for this moment, 5 years building the weapons we need, 5 years training our children for war, 5 years remembering what the galaxy did to us." The crowd was silent, but their attention was absolute. "The Council thinks we are gone? They think humanity is finished? They sleep peacefully in their comfortable worlds, believing they have solved the human problem forever." Supreme Commander Kong paused, looking out at faces that had been hardened by years of exile and dreams of revenge. "They are wrong. Humanity is not finished. Humanity is just beginning. We have become something new in this galaxy, something they never expected. We have become the thing they should have feared most." He gestured toward the viewports that showed the massive shipyard beyond. "In 1 year, our fleet will be ready. Our weapons will be tested. Our soldiers' test." The first sign that humanity had returned came from a small mining world called Kepler 442b. The planet was home to 3 million helix, a species that looked like giant beetles with 6 arms. They had been loyal Council members for 800 years, never questioning orders, never causing trouble. The helix miners were deep underground when the ships appeared in orbit. By the time the surface crews reported the unknown vessels, it was already too late. Supreme Commander Kang Do-yun stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Retribution, watching the mining world spin below them. It was an ugly planet, brown and gray with toxic storms that never ended. Perfect for what they had planned. "Commander, we're detecting approximately 50,000 military personnel on the surface," reported Captain Park Sun-ho. The young man had grown into a deadly officer, trained from childhood for this moment. "The rest are civilians. Eliminate the military targets," Supreme Commander Kong ordered. "Leave the civilians alive. They need to spread the word about what happened here." The human fleet opened fire with weapons the galaxy had never seen before. Energy beams that could cut through any known shield struck the planet's surface. Within minutes, every military base, every weapons depot, Every defense station was reduced to melting metal, but the real terror came when the transport ships landed. Human soldiers poured out of the landing craft, moving with the fluid precision of people who had trained for this their entire lives. They wore armor that seemed to shift and change, adapting to different environments. Their weapons fired bullets that could punch through tank armor or energy, beams that could vaporize living tissue. Commander Yoon Hae-jin led the ground assault personally. She was 55 years old now, her hair gray and her face marked by decades of planning for this day. Behind her came 2,000 human marines, each one worth 10 ordinary soldiers. The Helix tried to surrender almost immediately. They had never been a warrior species, preferring to mine their rocks and trade their metals in peace. But Commander Hae-jin had not come for surrender. Where are your council liaisons? She demanded of the Helix governor, an elderly creature whose shell was decorated with symbols of rank. Please, we have done nothing wrong, the governor clicked in the council's common language. We are peaceful people. We follow all council laws. You followed council laws when they fed Earth to the devourers, Commander Hae-jin replied. Your species voted to approve the human feeding. We have the records. The Helix governor's compound eyes widened in terror. That was 6 years ago. We thought all humans were dead. We're not dead, Governor. We're just getting started. Commander Hae-jin gave a signal, and her soldiers began herding the Helix civilians into groups. They separated the adults from the children, the healthy from the sick. It was efficient and terrifying. What are you doing? The governor asked. What the council should have done years ago. We're solving the Helix problem. Dr. Park Min-ho's biological weapons worked exactly as designed. The engineered virus spread through the Helix population in hours, targeting their specific biology. It didn't kill them quickly. That would have been merciful. Instead, it made them sick, weak, unable to work or fight, but the children were left untouched. Take them to the ships, Commander Hae-jin ordered. They're coming with us. Where are you taking our children? The governor pleaded. To be raised properly as humans. They'll learn our language, our customs, our hatred. In 20 years, they won't even remember they used to be Helix. This was humanity's new strategy. They didn't just conquer worlds, they stole the future. Every species that had voted for Earth's destruction would watch their children become human. Their bloodlines would continue, but their cultures would die. The news of Kepler 442b's fall reached the council within hours. Chancellor Tisara called an emergency session, her energy form flickering with agitation. This is impossible, she declared to the assembled representatives. The humans were eliminated. Earth was fed to the devourers. We have confirmation. Warlord Zephan, older now and scarred from recent battles with raiders, studied the tactical reports. These are not the same humans we defeated 6 years ago. Look at their weapons, their ships, their tactics. This is something new. Ambassador. Nex High's black eyes showed something that might have been fear. The survivors must have found new technology. Perhaps they allied with another species. What species? Chancellor Tisara demanded. Who would ally with a defeated people? The answer came 3 days later when the human fleet struck again. This time they hit Vega Prime, a beautiful world covered in crystal cities and floating gardens. Home to 12 million ethers, a species that communicated through music and had never fought a war in their entire history. The ethers tried to communicate with the human ships, sending complex songs that expressed welcome, confusion, and eventually terror. The humans responded with weapons fire, but this time something else came with the human fleet. Something that made the council representatives watching the battle transmissions go silent with horror. Devo, URERS. Not just one or two, but dozens. Of the massive bioships that had consumed Earth, they emerged from hyperspace alongside the human vessels, moving in perfect formation. But instead of attacking everything in sight, they followed human orders. Captain Ru Tae-hoon commanded the dreadnought Vengeance, the first of humanity's new superweapons. The ship was 5 kilometers long and armed with weapons that could crack moons. He watched with satisfaction as a dozen devourers surrounded Vega Prime. Dr. Park's control system is working perfectly, he reported to Supreme Commander Kong. The Devourers are responding to our commands as if we created them ourselves. Begin the demonstration, came the reply. What happened next was broadcast live to every council world. The Devourers began to feed on Vega Prime, but not randomly. They consumed specific targets, military installations, government buildings, council monuments. They left the civilian areas mostly untouched, but the message was clear. Humanity could destroy any world they chose. Piece by piece, the ethers evacuated their planet in terror, their musical communications now filled with sounds of despair. As their ships fled into hyperspace, human vessels followed them, tracking their destinations. Let them run, Supreme Commander Kong broadcast to his fleet. Let them tell the galaxy what they saw here. Within a week, panic spread across Council. Space. Species that had never worried about invasion suddenly found themselves building defenses. Trade routes shut down as merchant ships refused to travel unescorted. The peace that had lasted for centuries was crumbling. Chancellor Tisara tried to maintain order by calling another emergency session, but this time not all the representatives came. Some species were too busy preparing for war. Others had simply disappeared, their entire populations fleeing to the outer rim. We need to negotiate, declared Speaker Veltar of the Symbian Collective. Send envoys to the humans. Find out what they want. We know what they want, Warlord Zephan replied grimly. Revenge. They want to do to us what we did to them. That's impossible. We are hundreds of species, billions of worlds. They are just one species, a few million survivors. A few million. Survivors who control the Devourers, Ambassador Nexhai pointed out, and who have weapons we don't understand. The debate continued for hours, but it was interrupted by an urgent message from the Krex homeworld. The blue planet Krexia, population 8 billion, was under attack. This time, the human assault was different. Instead of orbital bombardment, they sent down landing forces that moved through the cities like a plague. Krex warriors, famous throughout the galaxy for their combat skills, fell by the thousands to human soldiers who fought with a savagery that shocked even a military species. Commander Yoon Haijin personally led the assault on the Krex capital. Her Marines moved through the streets in perfect formation, their weapons cutting down any resistance. But they weren't just killing soldiers. They were destroying symbols. Every statue of Krex heroes was pulled down. Every monument to Krex victories was destroyed. Every museum of Krex culture was burned. They weren't just conquering the planet, they were erasing its history. Why are you doing this? Demanded General Krexen, the planet's military commander, as he was dragged before Commander Haijin in chains. Because 6 years ago your species voted to feed Earth to the Devourers, she replied. You celebrated when my world died. You called it necessary for galactic peace. That was war strategy. Nothing personal. Commander Haijin looked at the Krex general with eyes that had seen too much death. General, everything is personal when it's your species that gets exterminated. She gestured to her soldiers, who began setting up strange devices throughout the city. The devices hummed with energy, projecting fields that made the Krex population sick and weak. These are pacification fields, she explained. They'll keep your people calm and compliant. No more warrior culture. No more military traditions. From now on, the Krex serve humanity. You cannot destroy our entire way of life. We can, and we will, just like you destroyed ours. The fall of Krexia sent shockwaves through the remaining council worlds. The Krex had been one of their strongest military powers. If humanity could defeat them so easily, what chance did anyone else have? Some species tried to flee beyond the galactic rim. Others attempted to hide in distant. Nexus Prime had stood for 3,000 years as the center of galactic civilization. The massive space station had witnessed the rise and fall of countless species, the signing of peace treaties, the birth of the Council itself. It was supposed to be untouchable, protected by layers of defenses that had never been tested in war. Those defenses lasted exactly 47 minutes against the human assault. Supreme Commander Kang Do-yeon watched from the bridge of the Retribution. as his fleet tore through the station's shields like paper. The weapons that humanity had built in the darkness between galaxies were beyond anything the Council had imagined. Energy beams that could fold space itself struck the ancient walls, and explosions bloomed like deadly flowers across the station's surface. "Commander, the outer ring is breached," reported Captain Park Sun-ho. "Resistance is lighter than expected." "They never thought anyone would attack this place," Commander Yoon Haijin observed from her position at the tactical display. 3,000 years of peace made them soft. Supreme Commander Kong nodded. "Begin landing operations. I want every council representative taken alive if possible, dead if necessary." The human marines who stormed Nexus Prime were not the same species that had once begged for council membership. These soldiers moved through the station's corridors like death itself, their armor adapting to every environment, their weapons cutting through any resistance. They had been born in the void, raised on stories of Earth's destruction, trained from childhood to hate everything the Council represented. Chancellor Tassara tried to escape through the station's emergency systems, her energy form flowing through power conduits toward the diplomatic quarters. But the humans had studied Council technology for 6 years. They knew every weakness, every hidden passage, every emergency protocol. Dr. Park Min-ho waited for her in the communication center, surrounded by devices that hummed with alien energy. The years had changed him into something that barely looked human anymore. His skin was pale from never seeing natural sunlight. His eyes were cold as the space between stars, and his smile held no warmth at all. "Chancellor," he said pleasantly, as her energy form materialized before him. "How good of you to join me." Tassara's form flickered with fear and rage. "You cannot do this. The Council represents hundreds of species, billions of lives. You are just one small group of survivors." "Just survivors?" Dr. Park activated one of his devices. An electromagnetic field surrounded the Chancellor, trapping her energy form in a cage of light. "Chancellor, we stopped being survivors the day you murdered our world. Now we're something much more dangerous." "What do you want? I want you to watch?" Dr. Park gestured to the screens around them, which showed the battle raging throughout the station. "I want you to see what happens when you try to exterminate humanity." On the screens, human soldiers moved through the council chambers like a plague. They weren't just fighting the defenders. They were destroying everything that represented council authority. Ancient artifacts were smashed, historical records were burned, symbols of unity were torn down and ground under human boots. In the main assembly hall, Commander Yoon Haijin stood before the Great Seal of the Galactic Council, a crystal formation that had been carved by the first species to dream of peace among the stars. She raised her weapon and fired a single shot. The crystal exploded into 1,000,000 pieces, each fragment reflecting the lights of burning stations and dying dreams. 3,000 years of history," Chancellor Tassara whispered. "You're destroying 3,000 years of civilization. Like, you destroyed 12 billion years of human evolution when you fed Earth to your monsters," Dr. Park replied. "But don't worry, Chancellor, we're not destroying civilization. We're replacing it." The battle for Nexus Prime's core section was brutal, but brief. Warlord Zephan made his last stand in the military command center, surrounded by the few loyal Krex warriors who had chosen to die rather than surrender. The four-armed alien fought with the skill of a lifetime soldier, his weapons cutting down human marines even as they overwhelmed his position, but Captain Ru Tae-hoon had come prepared for this moment. The young human commander had studied every recording of Krex combat techniques, analyzed every weakness in their fighting style. When he finally faced Warlord Zephan in single combat, the outcome was never in doubt. "You fight well, human," Zephan admitted as he lay dying, his forearms no longer able to hold his weapons. "Your species has become strong." "Strong enough," Captain Ru replied, standing over the alien who had once commanded fleets that could have protected Earth, but not because we wanted to, because you forced us to. We thought we were protecting the galaxy from a dangerous species." Captain Ru looked down at the dying Krex with eyes that had never known mercy. "You were right to be afraid of us, Warlord. You just weren't afraid enough." In the depths of the station, Ambassador Nexhai of the Ziran Union tried to coordinate the final defense. The emotionless aliens sent desperate messages to every council fleet in the galaxy, calling for reinforcements that would never come. All units fall back to the core, he broadcast on all frequencies. Repeat, all units fall back to the core. We must protect the central archives. But even as he spoke, he could see on his tactical displays that the battle was already lost. Human forces had penetrated every section of the station. Their weapons were too advanced, their tactics too perfect, their hatred too pure. The central archives were humanity's real target. Not the government chambers or the military centers, but the vast libraries that contained the history of galactic civilization. 3,000 years of records, treaties, cultural exchanges, and scientific discoveries. Supreme Commander Kong entered the archives personally, walking through halls lined with data crystals that held the knowledge of hundreds of species. His footsteps echoed in the silence, the only sound in a place that had once buzzed with the activity of scholars and diplomats. "Commander," called Engineer Ko-Jiwon from deeper in the archives, "we found what we were looking for." She led him to a sealed vault that contained the Council's most secret records. The truth about the Devour program, the list of species that had been fed to the creatures, the votes that had condemned entire civilizations to death. "Earth wasn't the first," Ko-Jiwon reported, her voice tight with controlled anger. "The Harani were fed to the Devourers 200 years ago. The Voss 150 years ago. The Kendari just 50 years before us. Dozens of species, Commander. All of them eliminated to keep the Council's core world safe." Supreme Commander Kong studied the records, seeing the names of species that no longer existed, worlds that had been consumed, civilizations that had been erased from history. All of it done in the name of galactic peace. "How many?" he asked quietly. 47 species, sir. Over the past 800 years. Always the newer members, always the ones with strong military potential. And the votes? Unanimous every time. Every council species voted to approve each feeding. They called it necessary sacrifice for the greater good. Supreme Commander Kong felt the cold thing in his chest grow larger. 47 species. Hundreds of billions of lives, all murdered by the same beings who had welcomed them with smiles and promises of friendship. "Burn it all," he ordered. "Sir, all of it. Every record, every archive, every piece of council history. I want it all destroyed." Engineer Ko looked uncertain. "Commander, some of this knowledge could be useful. Scientific discoveries, star charts, cultural databases. The galaxy doesn't deserve to remember what it was," Supreme Commander Kong replied. "When we're finished here, there will be only one history that matters, human history." As the archives burned around them, the last defenders of Nexus Prime finally surrendered. Ambassador Nexhai was captured in the communication center, trying to destroy the codes that controlled the Council's emergency systems. Chancellor Tisara remained trapped in Dr. Park's electromagnetic cage, forced to watch as everything she had spent her life building was torn apart, but the real horror was yet to come. "Attention all Council forces," Supreme Commander Kong broadcast on all frequencies from the station's main communication array. "This is Supreme Commander Kang Do-yeon of the human hegemony. Nexus Prime has fallen. The Galactic Council is dissolved." His image appeared on screens throughout the galaxy, showing a human who looked nothing like the hopeful diplomat who had first visited this station 6 years ago. This man's eyes held the weight of dead worlds and the promise of more death to come. For 800 years, the Council has maintained peace by feeding younger species to the Devourers. 47 civilizations have been murdered to protect Council core worlds. Today that ends. He gestured, and the screens showed images of human fleets throughout the galaxy, surrounding Council worlds, preparing for the final phase of the campaign. Every species that voted to feed others to the Devourers will now face the same fate. Every world that celebrated when Earth died will now burn. Every being that thought genocide was acceptable will learn what it feels like to be the victim. Across the galaxy, panic spread like wildfire. Species that had lived in comfort for centuries suddenly found human fleets in their skies. The Devourers, that had once been their weapons, now served humanity, circling their worlds like hungry sharks. 20 years had passed since the last Council world surrendered to humanity. The galaxy was quiet now, but it was the quiet of a graveyard, not the quiet of peace. Every species that had once called themselves free now served under the banner of the human hegemony. Supreme Commander Kong Do-yun, now called the First Regent, stood in his office aboard the command station that orbited the ruins of Earth. Through his window, he could see the dead world that had given birth to his species. The planet was still lifeless, still scarred from the Devourer attack 26 years ago, but it was no longer forgotten. Millions of humans made pilgrimage to Earth every year, bringing their children to see what the galaxy had done to their ancestors. The planet had become a shrine to human determination, a reminder of what happened to those who tried to destroy humanity. Regent, called Captain Park Sun-ho, now Supreme Marshal of the Hegemony Fleet. He was middle-aged now, his face marked by decades of war, but his eyes still held the cold fire that had been born in the void. The morning reports. The First Regent took the datapad and read the numbers that defined his empire. 312 species under human control. 47,000 worlds paying tribute to humanity. 800 billion non-human beings working to serve human interests. Any problems? He asked. A small uprising on Vega 7. The Ether colonists tried to establish an independent settlement. We reminded them that independence is no longer an option for non-humans. Casualties? None among our forces. Minimal among theirs. The new pacification fields work as designed. The First Regent nodded. The pacification fields were one of Dr. Park Min-ho's greatest innovations. Instead of killing rebellious populations, the devices simply made them unable to organize resistance. They could work, they could live, they could even be happy, but they could never again dream of freedom. It was more merciful than what the Council had done to humanity. It was also more effective. What about the new Earth colonies? Colony Ship 17 has established New Bizin in the Andromeda sector, population 4 million and growing. Colony Ship 23 is preparing to launch for the Magellanic Clouds next month. The First Regent smiled, one of the few genuine expressions of joy he allowed himself. The New Earth project was humanity's greatest achievement. Wherever they found worlds suitable for human life, they built new versions of their lost home. Each new Earth was a fortress world, defended by weapons that could destroy fleets, populated by humans who had never known defeat. The alien populations on these worlds served humanity willingly. Their children raised from birth to believe that humans were their natural leaders. It wasn't slavery, exactly. It was something more permanent than slavery. It was the complete transformation of entire species into willing servants. The Krex delegation is here for their annual tribute presentation, Marshal Park continued. Send them in. The Krex who entered the First Regent's office bore little resemblance to the proud warriors who had once dominated Council military forces. These aliens wore simple robes instead of armor, their forearms carrying gifts instead of weapons. Their leader, a female named Krexana, had been raised from childhood in human schools after her world was conquered. First Regent, she said, in perfect human language, bowing deeply. The Krex tribute worlds present their annual offering. She gestured to her companions, who placed their gifts on the First Regent's desk. Rare metals, beautiful crystals, works of art that showed human figures as godlike beings. All of it created by Krex hands for human appreciation. The tribute is acceptable, the First Regent replied. How are your people adapting to their new role? Very well, First Regent. The younger generation fully accepts human leadership. They understand that the old ways of violence and military pride led only to destruction. Under human guidance, we have found peace. It was true, in a way. The Krex had found peace. They had also found complete submission. Their warrior culture was gone, replaced by a religion that worshipped humanity as the rightful rulers of the galaxy. Their children learned human history instead of their own, spoke human languages better than their native tongue, and dreamed of earning the approval of their human masters. What of the older generation? They are adjusting, the pacification. Fields help them find contentment in their new lives. There is no resistance. There could be no resistance, Dr. Park Min-ho's technology ensured that. But the first regent had learned that willing submission was more valuable than forced compliance. Species that chose to serve humanity were more useful than those who had to be controlled by machines. After the Krex delegation left, the first regent walked through the memorial section of his station. The walls were covered with images of Earth, as it had been before the Devourers came. Green forests, blue oceans, white clouds, and the cities where 12 billion humans had lived and dreamed. "Beautiful, wasn't it?" said a voice behind him. The first regent turned to see Dr. Park Min-ho, now the director of Galactic Sciences. The years had been kind to him, in a way. His work had purpose now, his discoveries were appreciated, his genius was properly recognized. But his eyes still held the pain of a man who remembered what they had lost. "Sometimes I wonder what we might have become if they had simply let us live," the first regent replied. "Farmers, maybe, poets, explorers, people who built things instead of destroying them. Do you regret what we became?" Dr. Park considered the question for a long moment. "No, they chose our path for us when they murdered our world. We simply walked it better than they expected. Any word from the deep space expeditions? Colony Fleet 7 has reached the Triangulum Galaxy. They report suitable worlds for new Earth colonies and several primitive species that can be educated in proper civilization. Colony Fleet 12 is approaching the edge of observable space." The first regent nodded. Humanity was spreading beyond their own galaxy now, carrying their empire to places no other species had ever imagined reaching. Every new galaxy they entered would learn the same lesson the Milky Way had learned. Humanity was not a species that could be destroyed. They were a species that destroyed others. What about the Devourer breeding program? Ahead of schedule. We now have over 3,000 Devourers under our control, all genetically modified to respond only to human commands. They're stationed throughout the galaxy, ready to remind any species that considers rebellion what happens to those who oppose us. The two men walked to the observation deck, where they could see the vast fleet that patrolled human space. Thousands of ships, each one more advanced than anything the old council had possessed. The galaxy had learned to fear the sight of human vessels. "Sometimes I think about the young man who first came to Nexus Prime," the first regent said quietly. "Admiral Kang Do-yun, full of hope and dreams of galactic friendship. What would he think of what we've become?" "He would understand," Dr. Park replied. "He would understand that we had no choice. They made us into monsters because they were afraid we might become monsters. They created their own worst fear." A communication alert interrupted their conversation. Marshal Park's voice came through the speakers. "Regent, we're receiving a transmission from the Outer Rim. Unknown ships approaching the Kepler sector." The first regent and Dr. Park exchanged glances. Unknown ships were rare in the galaxy now. Every species was catalogued, every vessel was registered, every movement was monitored. Specifications? Technology level appears primitive, roughly, equivalent to early human spaceflight. They're broadcasting first contact protocols in multiple languages. The first regent felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Curiosity mixed with opportunity. A new species? "It appears so, Regent. They seem to be just achieving faster than light travel." Dr. Park smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. "How convenient. The galaxy has been quiet lately. Perhaps it's time for another lesson in human superiority." The first regent walked to his command chair and activated the fleet-wide communication system. His voice reached every human ship in the galaxy, every new Earth colony, every outpost where his species had planted their flag. "Attention all human forces. We've encountered a new species at the edge of our territory. They appear to be at a primitive level of development, much like humanity was when we first achieved interstellar travel. Across the galaxy, millions of humans listen to their leader's words. They will soon learn what every other species has learned. The galaxy belongs to humanity now. We are the ones who decide which civilizations live and which ones die. We are the ones who judge whether a species deserves to continue existing. In the command centers of 1,000 worlds, human officers prepared their fleets for another conquest. Send a delegation to meet these newcomers, the first regent continued. Show them the same hospitality the council once showed us. Welcome them to the galaxy. Offer them friendship and alliance. Let them believe for a brief moment that they have found peace among the stars. The irony was perfect. Just as the council had once welcomed humanity with false promises, now humanity would welcome others with the same lies. And when they trust us completely, when they have given us everything we need to destroy them, we will show them what the council taught us. We will show them that the galaxy has no mercy for the weak. The first regent looked out at the ruins of Earth one last time.